Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Pardon me. Last Sunday, January 10th, marked the 5th anniversary of the passing of singer, songwriter, and actor David Bowie, an artist who is celebrated as one of the most influential musicians of the 20th century. Today, I will take you on a brief tour of his 5th studio release, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, a masterpiece of glamorous rock filled with theatrics and celestial themes that will most likely be acknowledged as his most enduring and memorable of works. It is not only an absolute milestone in my musical journey and experience, it represents a pinnacle that clearly set the bar for all glam rock of the 1970s and is the most significant, influential, and meaningful glam rock release of the first half of its decade. Released by RCA on June 16, 1972, it was chosen the best record of the year by Rolling Stone magazine, is currently number 35 on their top 100 albums of all time, occupies number 26 on Popbox's 100 greatest albums of all time, and comes in at number 10 on UDiscover's The Greatest Rock Albums of All Time. Dissatisfied using his real name, David Jones, or Davy as he was called, which in the mid-1960s invited nothing but confusion with Davy Jones of the Monkees in America, he chose to adopt the stage name of Bowie after the 19th century American pioneer James Jim Bowie and the knife that he had popularized. And while his first 4 albums, 1967's David Bowie, 1969's Man of Words, Man of Music, which was later repeatedly re-released as Space Oddity, 1970's The Man Who Sold the World, and 1971's Hunky Dory, all saw poor sales, they were all really quite good, some bordering on brilliant, in fact. I'm happy to say that I still have my white label promo copy of Man of Words, Man of Music, and vividly recall hearing Space Oddity in heavy radio rotation in the winter of 1969 after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's historic July moon landing that year. Now, to be honest, I missed picking up Ziggy when it was released, but by the time I headed off to art school, post-high school, it quickly became a touchstone for my musical journey. But most of the songs for Ziggy were written around the same time as its predecessor, Hunky Dory, and Bowie recorded both albums at the historic and massively successful Trident Studios, located in London's Soho district. Norman Sheffield opened the groundbreaking Trident Studios with his brother Barry in March of 1968, and it soon became, and remained, an epicenter of the music industry over its nearly 15-year-long existence. Many of the era's most significant artists, the Beatles, Elton John, Carly Simon, Joe Cocker, Genesis, were drawn to its relaxed vibe, which really spurred their ability to be creative while surrounding them with the latest technology and the guidance and support of an excellent team of producers and engineers. The sessions for Ziggy started at Trident on November 8, 1971, and were completed in just 8 short days, with sessions starting by mid-afternoon and the day's work finishing by midnight. Now, this was normal in the 1970s, especially for artists like Bowie who had no real money to work with yet. And David freely admitted that he didn't like being in the studio. He'd get terribly bored, then bounce back with his "we've got to get this right" excitement. But an area where we, the listeners, got extremely lucky was with his decision to continue working with Trident's in-house recording engineer and producer, Ken Scott, as he had for his last 3 records. Now, Ken Scott worked with Bowie through his 1973 album of covers, Pinups, before taking his talents on to work for the likes of Jeff Beck, Stanley Clarke, Billy Cobham, The Tubes, Devo, Supertramp, the Dixie Dregs, Kansas, missing persons, even level 42. Now, as an assistant engineer, he had worked on milestone LPs like Beatles for Sale, A Hard Day's Night, Rubber Soul, and Help. And Scott has full engineering credits on masterpieces like Sgt. Pepper's, Magical Mystery Tour, the Beatles' White Album, and Abbey Road, as well as George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, Elton John's Madman Across the Water, Honky Chateau, and Don't Shoot Me records, John Lennon's Unforgettable Imagine, and Supertramp's magnum opus Crime of the Century, which is another album that will surely see the guilty treasure treatment here. Now, beyond Bowie as arranger, composer, primary vocalist, and producer, and playing guitar, saxophone, and some piano, the sessions for Ziggy included the efforts of the remarkable Mick Ronson, who is credited as an arranger, guest artist, and vocalist, and also played guitar, piano, mellotron, and synthesizer. Though we lost Mick to liver cancer in 1993 at just 46 years old, he continued to play with Bowie on 1973's Pinups before parting ways. He released 6 solo albums between 1974 and 1981, the most successful being his first album, 1974's Slaughter on 10th Avenue. But he also collaborated with T-Bone Burnett, Elton John, Morrissey, and Ian Hunter and Mott the Hoople. And he toured with Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder Revue in 1975 and 76. Trevor Bolder played bass guitar on these sessions, as well as on Pinups, before taking over as John Wetton's replacement in Uriah Heep from 1976 until 1981. He did a stint with Wishbone Ash, ironically, again replacing Wetton when Wetton had left the Ash, from 1981 to 1983. After which he returned to Uriah Heep, this time as Bob Daisley's replacement. Trevor passed away from cancer in May of 2013 at the age of 62. Mick Woody Woodmansey was the drummer here, having played on both The Man Who Sold the World and Hunky Dory, and he would also play in 1973's Aladdin Sane. But after leaving Bowie's lineup, he formed his own band, Woody Woodmansey's U-Boat, with Philip Murray, Frankie Marshall, Phil Plant. They were eventually joined by Martin Smith, and they released a debut album titled U-Boat in 1977. Now, he later played with the Cybernauts, a 1990s and early 2000s Bowie cover band, and is, I'm pretty sure, currently the feature drummer with 3D. Now, the last I'd heard about him was when he published his autobiography, Spider from Mars, My Life with David Bowie, in 2016. Now, there are a few other interesting guest artists during these sessions, but I'll touch on them as I take you through the individual tracks. But of the sessions themselves, Ken Scott said that despite what you tend to assume when you see the pictures from this time, there were no drugs whatsoever. And the only booze they ever had on hand was a couple of beers. Scott said that they were all extremely professional and easygoing, and that David was the best vocalist he'd worked with, stating that all his vocals for this album were first take. Think about that, especially when you listen to it. They finished up all the sessions on November 15th, 1971. One thing that remains unclear to this day is whether Ziggy was actually planned as a concept album, or if that was just part of the story and was a happy accident that helped sell the idea to the public. Producer Ken Scott thinks it was the latter, saying, "I just don't see it. To me, 3 songs link together: Lady Stardust, Star, and Ziggy Stardust, because they are all about the same person. But after that, it's just a bunch of songs that work together." Now, it's easy to believe, in part because, as Ken Scott has pointed out, David loved the Myths. Now, Woody always shared this sentiment, saying nothing was mentioned about a concept album at the time, as did Trevor, who always remained unconvinced by fancy notions of a grand narrative behind the record. Only Bowie knew if he planned it or not, but he certainly planted the seed to help the idea grow during a January 1972 Melody Maker article written after Ziggy was recorded, but before its release, by talking about this fictitious pop group. Regardless, the record-buying public ate it up, and David and the label went with it. Now, when asked later in life, he asserted that Ziggy Stardust was born out of a desire to move away from the Denon and hippies of the 1960s, which may account in some part for the Kanzi Yamamoto-designed Ziggy tour costumes. But with a running time of just 38 minutes and 38 seconds, from its opening cut, 5 years, to its close with Rock and Roll Suicide, there are no disappointments. And it represents one of the first perfect musical experiences of my music-loving life. Side 1, track 1, opens with arguably one of the greatest opening songs of all time, 5 Years. This track is simply and elegantly beautiful, combining a haunting melody with Bowie's magical and mystical lyrics. Now, opening with Woody's simple, minimalist drum beat, almost like a heartbeat. That rhythm swells and opens into the guitar and piano contributions when Bowie's stark voice finally enters. The intensity of his voice and the music build, adding drive and tension as the song continues to soar. The lyrics inform us that the Earth had just 5 years left before its inevitable destruction by some apocalyptic disaster. The string arrangement is magical, adding so much dimension and color to this cut. Then, Bowie delivers an interesting line by breaking with the fourth wall entirely and addressing listeners directly with, "I think I saw you in an ice cream parlor," initiating that seemingly direct link between Bowie and his fans that would last his entire lifetime. Guys, hairs involuntarily rose on the backs of countless necks, mine included, the very first time you'd hear this cut. This was one of the first signals that Bowie's enduring star was being ignited, and the track bookends with Woody's drum cadences diminishing to near silence. Side 1, track 2 is Soul Love. Following 5 years had to be a difficult feat, but Soul Love steps up with a decidedly more upbeat tone. And while it features pop jazz orchestrations, a similar hand clap rhythm as 5 years, its bongos and acoustic guitar seem to offer a calming sensation. This track features Mick Ronson not only on guitar, but on mellotron and piano too. And when you hear David's light and airy sax roll, and the near magical power of his voice combined with the haunting background vocals, this is another clear announcement to the music world that Bowie was changing the face of rock. It was crazy. His lyrical delivery, with its ethereal quality, is brought to a close riding gracefully out on Mick's astute guitar mastery. Side 1, track 3 is Moon Age Daydream. Though originally written and recorded earlier that year with a short-lived band known as Arnold Corns, it was recrafted here to fit the Ziggy narrative. Now, musically, the song uses harmonic and melodic hooks, as well as heavy metal-styled percussion and guitar. Now, and I've read that Ronson's guitar solo here was mostly improvised. And this is the song that introduces the character Ziggy. As things rapidly escalate from inspired to ecstatic, Ronson cuts loose with a concluding guitar solo to die for, unleashing a snarling alien life form from his guitar. As such, it has become one of Bowie's most iconic tracks, and may well be the archetypal Ziggy Stardust tune. Side 1, track 4 is Starman, which was said to have been written in response to RCA Records executives Dennis Katz's request for a single from this album. Here you get a taste of Bowie's power and vocal strength. From the strummed acoustic guitar that opens the track, through the drums, backing vocals, synth work, and soaring orchestration, it pulses into its rousing chorus, clearly adding a theatrical flair that is infectious. Now, the song's most soaring moment is that fabled octave leap on the phrasing of the title lyric, Starman. If you've ever heard Judy Garland sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz, you'll be familiar with this musical trope. Just as she splits the word somewhere with an octave jump between the two halves, Bowie employs the same gambit, arguably to even better effect, when he sings star and then jumps a full octave to finish singing man. When you give it a listen, you'll see what I mean. Side 1, track 5, closing out the first side, is It Ain't Easy. Okay, it's a cover. This Ron Davies penned track was first covered by Three Dog Night on their 1970 album of the same name. Now, I didn't know that then, but the arrangement is so Bowie, almost carnivalesque, and features the contributions of Rick Wakeman on harpsichord and backing vocals from Dana Gillespie, both of whom were not credited. But its uniqueness, including the backing vocals, though it has nothing to do with the Ziggy narrative, it unquestionably adds another conceptual layer to the album. Side 2, track 1, opens with Lady Stardust, written within days of another album track, Ziggy Stardust, in early 1971. Now, even with the trace of Elton John in the piano arrangement, Mick Ronson proves that he was equally gifted on keyboards, as the opening piano flourishes demonstrate. Again, David's vocal styling is remarkable, and with the backing vocals, they round out a sense of foreshadowing, and the song closes with a clear sense of foreboding. Side 2, track 2, is Star, a supercharged track that sees Bowie rewriting a song he had originally given to a little-known band called Chameleon to record in July of 1971, to employ a significant narrative device to support the concept of the album. Yet another reflection of Bowie, the showman. Piano, drums, vocals, combined with the tempo changes, make this cut something really special. And the pleading guitar outro promises something big looming on the horizon. Side 2, track 3, is Hang On to Yourself, a rocker that smacks of Kinks influence and really drives. Trevor Bolder takes the lead on this track as his bass line, dripping with glimmers of punk, all bolstered by Ronson's rollicking lead guitar again. Side 2, track 4, is the anthemic Ziggy Stardust. From its pleading, instantly recognizable opening Ronson guitar riffs that are both primal and complex, to the full weight of the band, the lyrics here tell Ziggy's story. Ronson's guitar drives this composition, and the additional power that Trevor and Woody add to it are key to letting these key lyrics work. There are many unforgettable Bowie lyrics in this song, which is filled with some of the most adventuresome and vivid imagery and storytelling he ever crafted. And guys, Bowie's vocals are near perfection, again. And Ronson supplies one of the finest riffs in rock. It's an amazing cut. Side 2, track 4, is Suffragette City. Supercharged with the electrifying riff that Ronson conjured up, even with its vague Little Richard influence, this is Ziggy at full bore. Hearing the piano stylizations here, you get a solid vibe of that era's Mott the Hoople. Now, I guess that should not be really surprising since before recording it for himself, Bowie offered the song to them, but they opted for Bowie's All the Young Dudes instead. But this is a straight-ahead rocking track and features one of Bowie's earliest uses of the ARP synthesizer, which would later form the backbone of his Berlin trilogy of records toward the end of the decade. Side 2, track 6, the LP closer, is Rock and Roll Suicide. Building from a slow-paced, strummed acoustic guitar opening, moving into sax and supporting guitar work. This is a theatrical cut backed by lush orchestral swelling and soaring to an almost schizoid conclusion. Listen as Bowie shouts the line, "Oh no, love, you're not alone." Recalling that Scott said Bowie's vocals were all done in one take, this should send shivers down your spine. In that moment, it's as if your monochrome life explodes into vibrant Technicolor. Now, as Mick Ronson's glorious final string-driven crescendo rings out, you should be simply wrung out from this spectacular, visceral, emotional, and magnificent musical trip. Guys, this was one of the most influential and significant rock recordings ever put down on tape. Its influence was so broad and significant, there is no way to accurately measure its impact or inspiration. I hope this little guided tour will introduce a group of new fans and maybe reintroduce or re-inspire those who may have put it behind them and moved on. Now, while this may not be the typical audiophile recording, meaning it won't be the first record you pull out to wow your audio buds with your system's sonic gymnastics, it is some of the most powerful, significant rock ever recorded. To me, this album solidifies the arrival of David Bowie, the superstar. Now, I still have an original 1972 USA RCA release, which, while historically relevant, is pretty average, even poor sounding. It was released as an RCA Dynaflex pressing. Dynaflex was a trademark name for a thin, lightweight vinyl LP material that they introduced in late 1969. Okay, listen to this. You can't do that with most records, guys. I mean, you shouldn't be able to do that. Okay. But Dynaflex records used a softer, more pliable formulation, allowing RCA to use less material and to provide more resilience in shipping, with the expectation of having fewer returns during shipping and handling and breakage. All done only to save money. They were so thin that they could almost be bent in half, actually. But without question, the 1981 Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs half-speed master release, which is commanding some pretty serious dough these days for mint-minus copies, offers the quietest, most dynamic, most extended, and most spacious sound from any release of this LP I've ever heard. And guys, on my system, this MoFi release has reduced any number of true Bowie fans to tears. One listener, while wiping tears of elation from their eyes, told me that though they had heard the album hundreds of times over the past 5 decades, hearing that MoFi pressing on my system was the first time they had ever really heard Ziggy Stardust. Now, I will add that the 2012 UK Parlophone 24-bit 96 kHz digital remaster available on Qobuz is really quite good as well. So all you streaming cats, go check that one out. I've provided a link in the description here. With that, I'd like to remind you all that if you find any merit or value in the information I'm sharing here, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share links to your favorite episodes with your friends. And I love hearing from you, so please don't hesitate to leave your comments and questions. And you may support the channel using Patreon, Venmo, or PayPal, or even by securing display advertising at the Audio Analyst website. And links for all those options are provided in today's description section. Guys, as always, thank you for taking the time to drop by today and visit. Please be sure to stay safe and keep the music playing. Till next week, cheers.